rock and she fell. I saw something, I swear, that said that the reason that the Macintosh had caught on fire was that she had fallen forward into the fireplace.
No, that he had fallen forward into the fire. The person wearing the Macintosh had fallen forward into the fireplace, and it had partially caught fire.
Oh, so they're saying this doesn't make any freaking sense. Wait,
yeah, it really doesn't.
And that they put the fire out and then pushed it under her body.
Oh, so killer wearing said Macintosh. Catches on fire, stops, drops, and rolls, and then rolls her up in it, or
shoves it under.
rolls it underneath her.
Why would somebody do that though?
I don't know.
It doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense.
It's tidy.
I think it makes more sense that she died on it.
Yeah, it's entirely. One theory about the Macintosh is that it was indeed Wallace's Macintosh. He hadn't taken it with him, and he had it probably hanging on a hook by the front door. And somebody called on her for whatever reason, rang the bell, and she put that on against the cold or whatever, or maybe she.
I have seen that too.
That was another theory.
Yeah, and that she was actually wearing it, and not necessarily with her arms at the sleeves, just draped over her shoulders. Maybe, who knows? Maybe she was in her pajamas and she was feeling modest, or for some reason, or whatever reason. Probably the cold, and so I think that's probably what it was.
I agree, but
the fireplace was on. I mean, you could say somebody came over for whatever reason to murder her, obviously, but it would have been somebody she knew.
Yeah, let's save this.
You want to save that?
Yeah, I want to save
All right,
this.
let's talk about that a little later then.
So, despite having a pretty solid alibi, created or not, and a really severe lack of forensic evidence, the cops arrested Wallace, as we said, and charged him with murder. It was a couple days later. Yeah. As we talked about a little bit too, this case, it's another case of the jury just kind of not liking the guy.
Yeah, the public, they hated him.
Yeah, they did. He was definitely condemned in public for the rest of his life.
Oh yeah, he constantly got hate mail, death threats and stuff.
He took the witness stand in his defense, I guess. Not against himself.
But he did kind of work against himself.
Yeah, and he appeared detached and cold, and the jury did convict him. The trial lasted 4 days, and the jury deliberated for less than an hour, and he was sentenced to hang for the crime. But then in March of 1931, the Court of Appeals did overturn the ruling. They just said there just wasn't enough evidence to have convicted Wallace, and so he was innocent. He obviously found it hard to return to normal life in Liverpool, so he moved to the country, and then he died in 1933, just 2 years later, of a kidney issue.
No, he didn't move to the country right away, because I know he took a non-public facing job with the insurance company for a while.
He tried to return. He moved. I think he lived in Liverpool for 6 months or something.
Okay, yeah, that
and then
that
he
sounds
moved
right.
to the country.
Okay,
yeah, he probably.
But he was pretty sick too.
Yeah, he was getting progressively worse.
Yeah,
he was. Neither one of those two was really in great health.
No.
Okay, so he was 51 at the time of the murder.
Yeah.
17-year age difference means his wife would have been 68. I'm just thinking about, I mean, they both would have been a rather slow pair, and I can see her age at that time of being 68 in the 30s is to me kind of the equivalent of being 90 today.
Kind of is, yeah.
I mean, just because of the way that you live and the harsh lifestyles, lackluster and just old and tired and just couldn't take it anymore.
Well, I think that he didn't really have much in the way of motive, except maybe he was just sick of her. But the other thing about it was I was going to mention her age as a motivation for him. And like you said, that would have been back in those days the equivalent of 85 or 90 years old. And he's starting to look at this and thinking, I don't want to spend the rest of my life changing her diapers. I'm going to put her out to pasture. That's kind of the way he looked at it. That would be a motivation,
I guess.
Yeah. And maybe he was just sick of her.
Yeah, that's also possible.
But
there's some quote actually. The quote I think is that you need no more motivation than being married.
Patricide?
Yeah. Which I think is probably fair. I say to a newlywed Steve.
Yes,
Yeah.
I did add matricide to my list of words.
Yeah.
That I'm now going to start using around the house.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that it's not actually a threat.
Oh yeah, she'll appreciate it.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, so we can jump into theories, but I just want to mention 2 or 3 things first. One really big thing is that the police unit that came to investigate the murder was really subpar.
Yeah.
To say the least.
Well, at the Liverpool police, I'm sure they're highly professional today, but back
Well, they
in
had
those days,
actually, I think it was in 1919, there was a huge strike and they lost more than half of their police force.
It was a huge amount.
Yeah, and so, I guess within 10 years, essentially, they had tried to replace everybody and it was not going very well.
I believe the term I saw for the staff was underqualified.
Yeah, but okay, so the really fine, whatever, they were unqualified. The biggest blow to this case that happened was their forensic expert. I guess they called him the
use
forensic
air quotes
expert.
around the word
Yeah.
expert.
His name was John McFall, and he operated under the pretense that his instinct was enough. He didn't take notes. He didn't run tests. He observed Julia's body and decided, based just on the rigor of her body, that she had to have been killed at 6 p.m., give or take an hour.
He actually had originally said she died somewhere around 8 o'clock or so, and then wound back the clock on that to match up when they charged Wallace.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a little bit
So
of...
that's hinky. That's hinky step number 1.
yeah.
Yeah, the only test that was, and that was
he-
the only test that was done on her at the
Yeah,
time.
he
It
didn't
was
take...
just- He didn't do body temperature.
No
They
temperature,
didn't take
nothing,
any
yeah.
blood samples. They didn't take any. They didn't collect any forensic evidence. They didn't try and fingerprint or anything like that. They did, I guess somehow, and I don't know how, but I guess they were able to determine that nobody had cleaned themselves up at the house. There wasn't evidence that somebody took a shower to clean.
The drains were
themselves
dry.
off. The drains were dry.
Yeah.
So, okay, that was good. At least they did that. So we know that whoever killed her would have been really bloody and would have had to probably left the house pretty bloody.
And that
Yeah, I
fact
think so.
alone completely, to me, blew their theory of what he did out of the water.
I agree.
Sure did.
Because
Yeah.
you're saying, hey, we've proved that nobody took a shower or used water in this house
Yeah, I
in
don't know why
hours
they
and
did
hours and
that.
hours. But this guy, he was buck naked and he killed his wife. Or my favorite is he was buck naked
Just the
in the Macintosh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the police actually questioned him quite extensively about the practice around his house of, they totally made this up, but they decided that he and he played the violin and Julia played the piano. They had these music nights. And they said, well, yeah, you like to do that naked wearing just your Macintosh, don't you? And he said, no, what? And they said, yeah, that's how you play the violin when she's playing the piano. You're just wearing your raincoat. And he said, no, what are you talking about? And they said, no, you like hanging out like that. So we're just going to go ahead and enter that as a matter of fact. You like hanging out with that, so obviously you killed her like that. So that's the kind of detective work that was happening around this case.
I know.
I forgot about that.
So I think that does it. Blows a pretty big hole, especially because the timeline just doesn't match up, right? We know based on the timeline that she was seen alive at about 6:45. He left. He had
6:30
to
at the earliest.
At the earliest, he had to have left the house at the latest. I would say at 6:49, but probably at 6:45 ish. He would have had to left the house to be on the tram to get there in time. There's no way that he ran it. No way he ran those 2 miles.
Yeah, when
Just
he got
no way.
and when he got home, he didn't have any blood on him at
He
all.
didn't. Yeah, well, he was clean as a whistle. None of his clothes had blood on it. He didn't have blood on it. There was no blood anywhere. And then the earliest he could have come back really is 8. So there could have been a 45-minute gap there, but I think he probably was there more like 8:30 based on when people were seeing him around that.
He couldn't have got back that early because he had the interaction with the policeman at 7:45.
Oh, you're right.
Right?
So the earliest he could have been back really is like 8:30.
Yeah.
So there's 15 minutes there. So really you got 15 minutes on either end to commit a brutal murder for, probably provoked reasons, then totally clean up. That's insane to me. That's crazy to me.
Yeah, the only
And
way.
clean up outside of the house somewhere.
Yeah, because he couldn't do it. Yeah,
Because he
no.
couldn't have done it in the house.
Yeah, and
Right?
so the
What
only
the
way
back
they
garden
were,
is for.
Yeah, but the only way they were able to get a conviction here was by impeaching the testimony of the milk boy. His name was Alan Close.
Yeah.
I don't know that he was not. I thought he was credible. Of course, I never saw him, met the guy or heard him actually speak. But
there's no reason to not believe. So anyway, that's a big thing, right? The medical examiner
Very important
was
to keep
bad.
in mind.
Yeah.
And the drains were all dry. Yeah. So you guys want to talk about theories? Because there are only two.
Is there?
Yeah,
Well,
I mean,
there's a few other theories out
there's
there.
two big ones.
There's two main theories.
Yeah.
And then there's
Okay.
like some sub theories.
Well,
Because
we're gonna
really,
explore them.
well, really, either Mr. Wallace killed his wife or he didn't.
Pretty
And
much.
the quote you hear around this is either Mr. Wallace killed his wife or he didn't, and if he didn't, then we have the perfect crime. I disagree, but hey.
Well, yeah, if he did it, it was the perfect crime. But if he didn't do it, it wasn't really the perfect crime.
Right.
That's how lots of people get killed, bludgeoned to death, and nobody ever gets caught. So.
Yeah. So let's talk about he totally did it first.
All right.
As repeated over and over again, as we just talked about. There's no more motive needed to kill your spouse than being married to them.
Yeah.
It sounds like their marriage wasn't particularly happy. It didn't sound like it was horrendously unhappy, though. It just sounded kind of...
Blasé.
Yeah, blah. And he wasn't like an adventure seeker. You know, it's not like he was saying, oh, I wish that my wife would go and take more risks with me and things like that. He seemed totally satisfied to just do his thing.
He sat at home. He played with chemistry. He played with electricity.
And
he
she just
played
kind of
with things.
let
Like he was
him do
sat
it.
and doing stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. It wasn't like
Yeah.
he was a big adventurer.
He had his hobbies, and people back in those days, I don't think were quite as romantic about marriage.
No,
as
I don't
they are
think so
today.
either. Yeah. So I don't. While I'm happy to say their marriage wasn't happy and passionate, I also don't think it was unhappy. I think it was. I would describe it as an ambivalent marriage, which usually you don't kill over. Usually.
No. Well,
I mean, maybe you do, but even if you do, maybe chemistry, maybe you poison your wife
yeah, there's other ways
instead of
to do it.
bludgeoning her to death. I mean,
Yeah, and definitely, if he was really truly sick of her and wanted out, then that was a way to avoid paying alimony. So that was a motive.
yeah.
Insurance wasn't a motive. She didn't have much in the way of life insurance.
20 pounds was her
Yeah.
life insurance policy, and
Yeah.
he would have known that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
So there's the argument that he made too much of a fuss over his alibi.
Over the
Right.
search for the house
Yeah.
and all that stuff.
Another factor is that phone call that he originally received at the chess club.
Oh, the message that was left for him.
Yeah. So it turns out that Wallace wasn't that consistent, as we said, of a attendee to these things. Beatty did say that he came about once every 2 weeks, and Wallace said that he didn't come that often because he didn't like to leave his wife alone at night, which, okay. I don't know, why not?
She may have been, trying to think of the right word to say here, a little prone to flights of fancy in terms of paranoia almost. She may have been...
Hysterics.
Thank you. Not. She may have just been. You can't leave me alone. It's dark and scary, and I'm
What if
by
somebody
myself.
came here? Yeah.
Yeah. Like he may have. Chess club may have been one of those few times that he could pry himself away from her at night.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe she really had enemies. So, hey,
From a life we didn't know about.
Exactly. Yeah.
She was a government assassin.
Yeah.
The reason that his attendance of the chess club is brought up is because how would that mysterious caller have known that he was going to be there that night?
How would he have, for that matter, how would that guy have even known that he went to the chess club at all?
Yeah, how would he have known that?
Actually,
Well, there's a couple of easy ways to find it.
There are some really...
There are
There
a
are
few,
some blatantly easy ways.
there are.
So the big claim here, to use Steve's term, is that Wallace made the call himself.
Yeah.
Right. We can do some debunking on this. First of all, Beatty described the caller's voice as strong and gruff, pretty much opposite of Wallace's demeanor, and he didn't think that he could have made that call. He didn't think that he could have faked the voice, which I think is probably fair.
Yeah.
Also, there was a posting of the chess championships that he was taking part in.
Yep.
Yeah. Who was matched to who and all that
Yeah,
stuff.
and
the
what
times,
day they
dates,
were.
Yeah.
Well, the time was the same. The time was consistent.
Yeah.
But it was what days they were showing up. And then it was actually posted on a bulletin board next to the phone booth that the phone call was received to, that had the phone number of that phone booth on it. So one could have looked at that list and gotten the phone number simultaneously.
And actually, this was not a dedicated chess club. It was
No.
Cottle's City Cafe. And a lot of different clubs met there.
So it was a totally public space.
And one of the persons who's been named as either a suspect or a person of interest, who we'll talk about a little later, was seen at least once at this club.
Yeah. So that we'll talk about that in a little bit. But the question is, how would that person know that he would show up? Well, they had no reason to believe that he wouldn't show up. There's some discussion around the fact that he actually hadn't been there in a couple weeks, because you can see that it was recorded that he lost his first game on the first night of the championship on the sheet of paper. There's pictures of it all over him. And then the next 2 games he missed, and then he played that night, the 19th. He didn't actually play the game he was meant to play in the championship. He played somebody else because his partner didn't show up. Again, reasons this chess club was probably disbanded is that nobody seemed to take it very seriously. Yeah. So while there's no reason to believe that he wouldn't show up, there's also no reason to believe that he would show up. I think that it's pretty easy to see how that person knew that he was going to show up based on where the phone call was placed from. And it was placed from a phone booth that was about 300 yards from Wallace's house. And a lot of people, again, point to, oh, well, then Wallace obviously placed the call himself. But no, because the tram that he was on, he would have had to have been on the tram about that time.
He would have had to been on at the same time, if not
the
before.
Phone was being, that the phone call was being placed.
Yeah, how many tram rides did it take to get to the chess club?
A couple.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
I don't remember seeing that specifically listed.
Yeah.
I just remember
I don't know either.
The times being called out, and that was it.
Yeah. So I think it would have been really easy for somebody to kind of watch him, see that he was leaving, and know probably where he was going, because it seems like that would be the place that he would be going at that time, and call and say, oh, is he coming tonight? Oh, you don't know? Okay, well, I'm going to leave this message for him anyway, because I know he's on the tram. And it actually became very important, and then let go, and it became really, really important to him to know what time. And he asked Beatty, okay, what time exactly?
You kind of asked him a lot, actually.
He did, and Beatty kept saying, I don't know.
That's the exact same behavior, though, that we saw him exhibiting with the tram driver.
Right, and so that's the
badgering.
thing, is there's 2 sides to this claim, right? Either he was trying to make sure that Beatty said, it's this time, it's definitely this time, and that he would have been able to say, well, I had to have been on the tram that time, to establish a further alibi. Or he was trying to recall, okay, around that time, where would I have been? Can I prove that I wasn't there? Oh, and also, was there anybody, did I see anybody I knew hanging around? Because if I saw somebody I knew hanging around, they placed the phone call, they were responsible for me being gone when my wife was murdered, and they were probably responsible for murdering my wife.
He's trying to figure it out.
Yeah,
right.
That sounds fair.
So on either side of that, I think. And Beatty said he couldn't recall what time the phone call had been placed, but it turned out that the Anfield telephone exchange, somehow, by the way that the call was placed, and I don't know what that means.
Might have been to an operator?
I thought maybe through an operator, but they had it recorded, and it was at exactly 7:20 p.m. So that's the time the call was placed. I'm pretty sure that Wallace would have had to have been on the tram by that point, but there you go.
Yeah. It just... Everything that I've seen about the guy doesn't show me that he has it in him. Yeah,
I don't think he had the guile. I don't think he was smart enough either, and I don't think there was any motive, and I don't think he had the time.
Yeah, even if he didn't like his wife, beating somebody to death, I would imagine is, he didn't seem to have that kind of character.
No, he didn't. Again, he knew chemistry. Why not just poison her?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on to the theory heading. Not just the theory heading that he totally did not do it. And again, it's the time, right? The time is such a huge problem for me in this. Is where did he have the time to commit this murder?
Yeah.
Where? And clean up after himself.
Yeah, that's the whole problem. Is even if, say, the milk boy was totally wrong about the time, there's still the whole question of how he managed to do it, go somewhere and get all cleaned up and changed.
And not be seen.
Of course, this was it probably would have been pretty dark in Liverpool by say 6 p.m.
At the
6:30 p.m.
At the most, he had 49 minutes.
Yeah.
Because somebody saw him coming home at 6:30.
Yeah.
So it's substantiated at 6, that he didn't get home any earlier than 6, and he had to have left at 6:49. before,
Or,
probably,
before
to make the
6:49.
tram.
Yeah.
But, again, the most unaccounted time that we can give him is 49 minutes. And that's still not a lot of time.
Not really.
It's still not, and I'm not willing to say that the milk boy was wrong. I think there's every reason to believe that he knew exactly what time it was when he picked up the milk money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you saw there was a church nearby, and it wasn't visible actually from the house, but
it was about that time.
But from not far away.
Yeah,
so, yeah.
That's why there's that little, it was either 6:30 or 6:45. I don't know. The time is such a big problem for me.